Hello everybody, how are you doing? Welcome back to Rule of Two Review, and today I felt like making a video that everyone was going to hate. So joking aside, I know this probably will be a kind of polarizing video, but what we're doing is really just to be constructive and hopefully shape some things to be a little bit more positive than they might have been on the Nintendo and on the Nintendo Switch front. Something that I think should be a really healthy thing to be able to do, and to be able to do in a fairly impartial way. You know, we want to try not to be too biased and throw too much of our fanboyism of whatever it is that we love and enjoy in the companies and products and games and things that we love so much. We want to be able to still look at the good and the bad, take them in for what they are, and try to talk about how to make them improved in the future. So what we're obviously talking about is Nintendo, their business model, the Switch itself, all things that are great, but also things that maybe need to be improved. And that is the real trick here. That's the key to be able to pay attention to, guys. I feel like it's important to note that there's so much good happening with Nintendo right now. I mean, you guys know me and Rule of Two Review and this channel, and it is primarily about Nintendo and the Switch, and it is primarily about all of the crazy good things happening, or theorizing about more good things continuing to happen. I mean, it's crazy to go into this conversation without acknowledging the fact that this is the strongest and best Nintendo we've seen in a very, very long time. Since I would argue probably 2011 or so. I remember the 2010 E3, still during the Wii era, was really fantastic, and like so many great things were announced. I believe Luigi's Mansion 2 was announced then, Donkey Kong Country Returns for the Wii, and the GoldenEye game, Kirby Epic Yarn, and I don't even know what else. Probably Skyward Sword, because that would have been the year before Skyward Sword came out. And that was a great year for Nintendo, and things still felt okay, even though the Wii was beginning to sort of see its success start to wane and go away at that time. Pretty solid year for Nintendo overall. Since then, we know it's been pretty dark. With the exception of 2014 being a great E3 year and a great video game release year, it's been spotty ever since. But now, in the Switch age, which I've brought up so many times on videos, we've seen a great Nintendo, a confident Nintendo, a successful Nintendo product. People in the world and gamers and Nintendo fans and non-Nintendo fans alike starting to rally around the company and their new console again, and all these amazing games that they're releasing, and they're continuing to give us all these surprises and all these things that I also discussed on the last video, and it's been really great to see. So it's not like Nintendo ain't killing it. They're selling their console like crazy. Everything is great right now, but there are still some things that Nintendo, just like Nintendo always does, they're continuing to maybe mess up, not get right, and we probably need to see them start to fix some of these things pretty soon. And so, in trying to only be constructive and talk about the fact that, hey, guess what? Nintendo is not perfect. They make mistakes on the regular, consistently, as much as we love them. And so let's talk about these things that maybe they're not doing so well and hope that they make these right decisions. So 3 main points I wanted to touch on in this video, things that I think Nintendo isn't really getting right and they need to try to get right sometime soon, because it would only be better for them as a company and for us as the gamer and the consumer. The first thing I wanted to talk about is probably the most obvious of all of these, and it's their whole online scenario. And okay, let me amend that. Not their whole online scenario, because one thing that's pretty solid is their connection. You can get online with their games that you can play online, and for the most part, it works well. Some games might have some issues here and there, obviously on the third-party front, which kind of is not as much a Nintendo thing as it is a third-party developer kind of thing with their specific titles running on the Switch. But on the whole, you can get online and play some of these great games available on the Switch, mostly Nintendo games, and it's great, and it's a lot of fun. There's some things you can't do. The friend lobby situation sucks with some titles here and there, of course, but overall, that part is fine. But when I say that there's a problem, it's really with everything else as far as what they're doing with their structure. We got this paid service that no one really knows about. It's still a big mystery. They're continuing to not tell us anything going on there. They've promised this cycle of retro games, and then they've changed and removed that, so now we don't really know what's going on. Is the Virtual Console ever going to happen? Are we going to see GameCube games? Then they do this weird, cool, but weird arcade sort of retro thing with like redone versions of like arcade Mario Brothers and Donkey Kong and stuff. And so much mystery there, let alone the voice chat situation and the app and everything that started with Splatoon, and that is still a humongous mystery going forward. And so I have to say, as a huge Nintendo fan, I do see right now the online situation with the Switch still being a problem. And it's for mostly the mysterious reasons. It's the fact that Nintendo is still playing coy. They're still laying off the subject. They're not giving us any promise of information in the future. We have no idea when this paid service is going to roll out, if it's actually going to be worthwhile. And when you combine the paid service with the app that no one likes, is not convenient, doesn't add to the online gaming experience, and is remarkably restrictive to voice chat, which, by the way, I don't even care about. So this isn't like Rob complaining about Rob's problem. I'm looking at the bigger picture. I'm talking about all of you guys out there that do care about this, and I'm trying to speak up and be your guys' voice, because I don't really care if the voice chat thing fixes itself for me. But I do care for Nintendo, and I do care for the audience playing on the Switch. And this stuff is a problem. And Nintendo, I feel like they are just, I don't want to say floundering behind the scenes, but I think that they're struggling behind the scenes, and they're continually tweaking and revamping and probably trying to figure out the best way to put this thing forward and finally deliver an online service that feels appropriate, accurate, worth the money that they're finally going to start charging for us, and does actually enhance the gameplay experience. And I will say, if that's true, that is inherently a good thing, because it means Nintendo is like possibly acknowledging that there's problems, that there's faults, that the feedback has been very negative, and if they're gonna put this out there, they want it to be right, and they're hopefully just trying to do the right things and improve the whole situation. And if whatever time next year the whole thing finally launches and kicks into gear and they've improved a lot of the problems, well, then that's a good thing, and that's everything that I want this conversation to lead towards, is to say and to showcase, hey, this is a problem, Nintendo, you're doing this wrong, people need it to be better and they need it to be fixed, and so please do that, and maybe that's what's going to happen. But there is no doubt we can't really turn a blind eye to the fact that right now it's a little bit strange. And they're doing the thing where they're going silent on this, and that's a thing that a lot of people struggle with and they don't really want to have to deal with from Nintendo or for any company. Why be so silent on this? Tell us when you're going to give us a Nintendo Direct about this, or at least a window of time when you can explain it, let alone the fact when the darn thing will launch, you know? And what I want to believe is something that Nintendo is incredibly good at, is they're really good at when they wait a very, very long time to implement something that the rest of the industry has been doing for a while. Typically, we will see them finally do it and do it very, very well. Sometimes even the best. Like, the DLC thing is a great example. They were really not into DLC for a very long time, and now we're in an age where they do DLC occasionally, and for the most part, not every instance, but most instances of them doing DLC has been fantastic, and the best examples of how to do it, and they're creating complete gameplay experiences before the DLC even becomes a thing. And that's all well and good. So maybe when they roll out the online stuff, the same thing will be happening. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, so we'll just have to see. This voice chat app, it's got to go. I want to believe, and I was optimistic before it launched. I wanted to believe that Nintendo was going to surprise us and this thing was actually going to turn out to be great and enhance the gameplay experience. But that's not been the case. It's only been restrictive. It's only been cumbersome. No one likes it. It makes it easy for nobody. It uses all of the resources on your phone, which shouldn't even be involved. And so, honestly, it's got to just go away. I do think that the concept is sound, but I think it needs to just be a companion app that has nothing to do with connecting you to other players online. If you can just open it up to, like, see who's playing online and check your stats in individual games, first and third-party games, by the way, because I think that the app potentially presents a barrier to some third-party companies down the road as well. It's just my speculation, but I think that there's something to that. If they made it something like that, but all of the gameplay functionality, all of the lobby making and friend requests and all that stuff happens through the system. The voice chat happens through the OS and through the Switch itself and the hardware. I think that everything will work out there. So with any luck, that's what they're doing. Virtual Console, probably far down the road. They need to get this SNES and the NES Classics out there and probably make money that way. So I think the whole thing is kind of a mess. People care about online gaming. They want the experience to be smooth and easy, and right now the way the competition does it is far superior than how Nintendo has been presenting it so far and what we think we can expect when it finally rolls out. So let's just wait and see. Nintendo, this stuff matters in 2017 and 2018 gaming. You gotta get the online thing right, so hopefully next year it turns out to be pretty great. So the next thing I want to talk about continues to be topical, even though it really blows my mind after so many years. And in the end of 2017, we're coming up on 2018, and this is still an issue and something that people still see and complain about. But it's important and it's relevant because of how the culture of gaming works in today's era. It's really important for Nintendo to acknowledge and understand this and to work better with it. And it is YouTube. It's Nintendo and YouTube, the channel, YouTubers, content creators like myself and many other friends and compadres in this kind of community, and a lot of you guys out there who are viewers of all the content that a lot of us put out, who want to support Nintendo and other game companies and anything within the whole nerd culture, really. And Nintendo, we all know, they're one of the few entities that are still really behind the times on what's happening with YouTubers and content creators and content influencers. Now, I can say as somebody in this community that it has been improving, and there are some people who I've worked with at Nintendo and who represent Nintendo who do exist solely to try to facilitate and cultivate this sort of community and understand and acknowledge through Nintendo's wisdom that there is something happening here that actually is nothing but a benefit to all of the companies and all of the industry when it comes to this. So it's not like Nintendo isn't slowly making steps, and even the creators program, as misguided as it is still a step in the right direction, and I do want to acknowledge and give them credit for that step, as misguided as it may be. So at the end of the day, it's everything that we already know. Nintendo doesn't like when ad revenue or any revenue associated with a third-party platform that isn't Nintendo's platform gives money to people who showcase and do and discuss certain things when it comes to Nintendo. And, you know, I'm somebody who, I don't make a living off of YouTube. The money I make is a small amount every month with the size of my channel, and it really is just meant to facilitate what the channel itself is. It's nothing that I'm making a living on. I have no plans to do that. I've said that many, many times. I really just do this just for fun. And so I'm not trying to speak as in Nintendo's ruining my channel and making my YouTube career hard, because it's not. I talk about Nintendo all the time, but I rarely show any footage because I don't want to get involved with that mess and the copyright strikes that Nintendo still does. I even tweeted about this the other day. I featured some full-screen Bayonetta 3 footage from the reveal at the Game Awards the other day, and Nintendo copyright claimed that immediately. I mean, before I even made it live, I had to re-edit the video and re-upload it before I actually made it live. And that was something that was only a trailer. There's like no gameplay footage or anything happening there, but Nintendo was already set up to, and it's Nintendo. Now, it's a Platinum Games game too. I know it's exclusive, but it's not even a Nintendo property or a Nintendo license, and they still claimed it. Like, they're still like, no one can show this Bayonetta footage that isn't even really footage from a 40-second trailer, and heaven forbid we encourage people to talk about our new game, so we gotta claim it. And so what happens when Nintendo prevents people from making money off of showing things like that is they're de-incentivizing people from wanting to even talk about and promote Nintendo's products and their games in this big exclusive third-party franchise title, Bayonetta 3, that they should want getting out there. I mean, it's everything we've always said. None of this conversation is new to you guys. I'm not telling you anything we haven't heard of or talked about before. It's only free promotion and it's free marketing. And Nintendo should be more willing to facilitate and cultivate and allow the sort of free-form discussion that can happen on YouTube and the sort of stuff that we have the ability to showcase gameplay-wise. They should be far more open to it than they've been. And it really is holding back the community. It's sending a poor message from Nintendo to the community, to the gamer, to the content creator. And it creates this weird wall and this weird barrier between Nintendo and everyone else, and Nintendo and their competition, because here's the thing. The rest of the industry, like 99.5% of every other company that isn't Nintendo and every other game, has no issues here. You guys, I can tell you, when I first started YouTube and Rule to Review a couple years ago, I would get claims from like Konami or Sega for the occasional thing sometimes. Yes, absolutely. Nowadays, that's gone away. The only company I have dealt with claiming anything is Nintendo for at least 2 years. So Nintendo are those guys. And it's not healthy for them, it's not healthy for the community, and it's not healthy for the industry to see this happening, you know, and everyone else, all these other companies promote it, all the Halo guys, all the Call of Duty guys, everything on the Game Awards, they're talking about the Influencer of the Year and the Trending Gamer of the Year, and that comes from the idea of it's healthy and good and positive to let people talk about and play your games online, and it makes people want to go spend money, and Nintendo is just like not having it. And of course, I should reiterate this point, you know, it isn't like Nintendo isn't legally allowed to do what they're doing. So that's the only thing people try to come back with when it comes to this topic is Nintendo's allowed to do it. They own it. It's their right to do it. And so they should be allowed to do it. And you know what? Yeah, okay, you're right. Yes, Nintendo has the right. Any company has the legal right to do it. On paper, they can do everything they've been doing. Absolutely. Does that make it morally right? Does that make it business sense correct? And no is the answer to both of those. Morally, it is demoralizing and disheartening to the gamer, the YouTuber, everyone, all these groups I keep lumping into this conversation. To everyone who's not Nintendo, it is demoralizing, and it only prevents positive relationship and positive promotion. And from the business perspective, the business sense says, no, it's also not a good thing. It is not a smart thing. And it only creates barriers, and it prevents all of these other positive things that could be happening if Nintendo just allowed it and was pro-gamer, pro-YouTuber, pro-whatever, within moderation. I mean, sure, some things they may want or not want. I'm not saying that they couldn't still moderate how it all happens, but to be doing it the way they've been doing it for years and still continuing to ride that issue, I think is a problem. And I think it's setting Nintendo back, and it separates them from their competitors in this respect in a very negative way. And so again, as somebody who isn't trying to talk about this for my own personal gain, because it doesn't affect me whatsoever, my channel sees all of its success without the need to run into this problem, so I don't care. But I see it for the larger problem and for the larger community. And so yeah, this is a huge thing that, God, Nintendo, sometime soon, you gotta just take that. You gotta just fix this. You gotta remove your insanely tight grip on this online community content creator thing, and you have to fix this. Now, the last thing has been a very common topic since the Switch launched. It's really ramped up the last couple of months or so with some newer third-party titles coming out. It's important, it's controversial. I've discussed it a little bit on my own channel. It's definitely been discussed in a lot of podcasts, including podcasts I've also been on myself. And it's the memory and the storage situation and what's available on the Switch and what third-party developers are demanding for their download sizes and how nothing really seems to add up, and it's all about, oh, you gotta buy more memory for your Switch, not to mention the fact, the bigger one for me, that some third-party titles, based on the size of game cartridge, they're electing to spend the money to use to make their game physical. Sometimes they cost more on the Switch than they do on the competing consoles. We've seen a $10 difference in price for a couple of titles here and there third-party based on this fact. And this is all stuff that I have to admit is a problem. I'm not super overly concerned with the storage size thing. I have discussed this. I don't mind the fact that I had to spend 40 bucks on a 128 gig micro SD card before the Switch came out to put in my Switch. Okay, I paid 300 bucks for my Switch. I had to spend another 40 for a micro SD card. And this is somebody who buys all my games physical if I can anyway. And so it's like, it's kind of dumb to have to do that pretty much since day one. But I didn't mind overall. It's like less than the price of a game, so it just is what it is. That being said, a lot of people go digital only, or digital as often as they can. And then you're taking up even more memory. And there is something to be said for the fact that on the third-party situation, they can't compress their data the way Nintendo can, and so their games are coming out with multiple downloads required to complete your experience for 20, 25, 30 gigs sometimes for everything you need, more than what the Switch out of the box could even store. So you couldn't even put one NBA on your Switch if it's the only game you owned, especially if it's digital, right out of the box. You gotta have more memory to complete that experience. And a couple of other games is the same thing. If we can expect a Call of Duty or a Grand Theft Auto next year, which I believe in, we're going to see the same problem continue with those games for sure. And so yeah, even though it doesn't really affect me or bother me, it is a problem. It is definitely a problem that Nintendo chose to go this route, and people are starting to run into the issues, and people are very, very unhappy with it. I think some people get a little too angry at the idea, but there is merit to the conversation, so I won't tell them that they're necessarily wrong either. There is a case to be made, and I've talked about this before as well, that this problem exists across the board. Nintendo isn't the only company. I've got a PS4 and Xbox One I play on all the time as well, and I'll tell you, I've had to delete many games and reinstall and upload many other games, and I'm having to change my library. Xbox One is horrendous at how it stores and compresses data for games. I mean, 4 games is like all I can fit on my 500 gigs, let alone 32 on the Switch. 500 gigs ain't even enough, and so I'm until I buy a hard drive, which I don't think I want to do, I just have to keep deleting and re-uploading games. But if I want to fix the problem, well, sure, you have to buy a micro SD card for your Switch, but I'd have to buy a freaking complete separate device plugged into my Xbox One, a hard drive, just to be able to do the same thing. So a micro SD card that just slides into your Switch and is always attached to it and inside of the components isn't as cumbersome as buying a hard drive for sure. But that being said, it is still an egregious error on Nintendo's part, and people have a right to have been complaining. Now, the thing that I have a problem with more on this topic, and something that I think I can put squarely much more on Nintendo's fault than I can any of the other third-party developers, is the situation where sometimes a third-party title, physical, will cost more than it will for the version on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, or PC, or what have you. And so, again, the quick recap is, we all know why that happens, because instead of CD and DVD discs like other versions are, or digital downloads, a Nintendo Switch game physical is a little cartridge. It's an actual physical plastic cartridge. It's got a chip on there. It's got its own memory and storage. There's like 16 gig cards and there's 32 gig cards or whatever. And the different size of cart that a developer would choose to put their game on costs a different amount for the developer to produce. And what's been happening is, because of that and the unique nature of cartridges on the Switch, that extra cost that the developer is costing to make their physical games, in some instances, is getting passed on to the consumer. And so the consumer might have to pay $10 more to pick up the physical version of a game like Rhyme, for example. That was like the first time we started to learn this might be a problem. And so here's why I have an issue with this. Full disclosure, I make enough money in my job that I'm not really squabbling over actually having to pay $10 more on something. It's like, I can afford the $10, so it's not like, oh my god, I can't buy these games because of the $10. But I think that a lot of people are probably in that situation and position, and they shouldn't have to deal with the issue of games costing more on the Switch just because cartridges cost more. I understand the practical reasons for it costing more, because physical goods cost money to produce, and that's fine. The reason I have a problem here and put it on Nintendo is because I feel like, given that Nintendo chose this business model, chose the format of the Switch to make it what it is, which I love, but they chose to do it this way. They chose cartridges to make their physical media, and that means that they knew when they accepted to do this that sometimes it's going to cost more to produce the physical games. I think Nintendo would have been smart, for the perception to the gamer and smart business-wise and for the PR of the whole situation, to be eating that cost when it happens. I think Nintendo, they chose the model where sometimes games are going to cost $10 more. They should be eating that cost and not allowing it to be passed on to the consumer. So that if a third-party developer says, okay, we're going to make game X, Y, and Z for your Switch, we're going to port our game over to the Switch, we have to pay a little bit more for these cartridges, so we need that made up somehow. Either we can charge the consumer $10 more, or Nintendo, you can eat this cost so that it doesn't become a barrier for Nintendo Switch gamers to want to buy this version. It shouldn't. A Nintendo Switch gamer might want Rhyme on the Switch, but then it's like, well, it's $10 more, so forget that, Nintendo. You're gonna make it so I have to pay $10 more. Screw you. I'll buy the $30 version on the PS4. Bye bye. You lost my money, and I don't remember the developer. And the developer of Rhyme lost my money on the Switch version. They're gonna get it for the PS4 version. So Sony wins, Nintendo doesn't here, and so, whereas a lot of us might still be willing to pay that extra $10, myself included, a lot of people won't be. And you've suddenly created a wall segregating on these games that cost more. Nintendo is allowing there to be a wall segregating the Nintendo Switch gamer and the everyone else gamer, and the Switch gamer being forced to pay $10 more because Nintendo won't eat the cost of their new business model. I see that as a problem. Again, not for me. I can buy a game for another $10, but I do think it stings a little bit more when I feel like it shouldn't be this way. Nintendo should have been willing to make it even keel across the board so that no one feels ripped off and no one is getting a worse deal. Just my opinion, but personally, I see that as a little bit of an issue. And so, at the end of the day, when we look at all three of these issues that I discussed here today, To be fair, none of them are like backbreaking, none of them are industry shattering or Nintendo Switch shattering. I don't think any of these are going to truly make or break Nintendo or the success of the Switch going forward. So I hope that that's understood here. I don't think that this is like everything about Nintendo's success rides on these things being fixed in the future. I think the online thing is the most important here. I think that that is something that could do more damage than good if it's not fixed. But even still, I don't think it's going to like stop people from being interested in the Switch, from enjoying their Switch and buying games on the Switch, or running out to the store to pick up a Switch if they don't already have one just because the online situation sucks. But what could happen is if it's better, it's going to greatly improve the experience. More people would be interested in going out to buy a Switch and not see it as this inferior console to the competing consoles. And it would make developers probably happier and make it easier for them to want to port and bring some of their big games that might be multiplayer focused over to the Switch. They'd have more incentive to do so if they didn't see the online situation as a barrier, both for their development and for people to be willing to buy their versions of the game on the Switch. Because that's what happens. If the online situation sucks, even if the game exists on the Switch, people might be like, well, I don't want to buy the Switch version because the online sucks for the Switch, so I'd rather buy the Xbox or PlayStation version. And so developers need to see this happen as well, I think. So the online is the most important, but at the end of the day, you guys, everything's going to be fine for Nintendo and the Switch. I'm not trying to spell doom here. I'm just trying to be constructive, man. We got to be able to look at the positives and the negatives of everything happening with Nintendo and the Switch. I haven't had a reason to do that in a while, and so I thought it would have been a very smart and healthy thing to do, both for myself as a Nintendo fan and a gamer to discuss these out loud, and for you guys to hopefully watch the video, hear the conversation, considering the ideas that I'm putting out there, and sort of weighing the importance of all the good and bad, and so you can have a more objective and healthy and mature perspective on Nintendo and the Switch, and not just the blind, biased fanboyism running into it head first, like, everything is great because it's Nintendo and yay! You gotta be able to do the opposite as well. So these are the big three things that I see Nintendo really needs to improve. I think they've been doing wrong so far, and I would like to see them get hopefully rectified within the next 6 months to a year. I don't really expect, honestly, either of these things to improve, to be fair, so I guess it's kind of fruitless to discuss it, but like I said, I enjoyed doing it, and I think it's healthy for all of us to hear these kinds of conversations. So tell me what you think about the ideas that I discussed below. Do you agree they need to be fixed and Nintendo is doing them wrong, or do you disagree? Are there other things I didn't discuss that you think Nintendo needs to fix that you want to also bring up in the comments? Definitely continue the conversation below. That is it for me. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.